You are probably here precisely because there was a problem with freedom of expression in Tanzania.
The state of freedom of our Bill of Rights in 1984, after almost quarter century of having a constitution that did not recognize human rights during the first more than 2 decades of independence. But we got a Bill of Rights in our constitution, but it contained very serious limitations on your freedoms. For example, talking of freedom of expression, and clear that to freedom of expression, and with that constitutional provision, right to free expression. Since 1953, we have had in our criminal statutes. Now, sedition is a classic offense against. The reason it was enacted in 1953 was the colonial state, the British colonial state, legislatively to deal with the nationalist movement that was then emerging. So it is the year is 1 year before the nationalist movement TANU was born. And for those who may not know our history very well, the first convict of youth was a person known as Julius Kambarage Nyerere, who was the president of Tanganyika African National Union, and 2 other persons. One is Rashid Bagdele, who was the editor of a newspaper called Mwafrika, and another one was Robert Makange, who was an editor of a newspaper called South. The first people to be convicted this offense against free speech, Baba wa Taifa, Mwalimu Nyerere, and those 2 persons I've just named. One would have expected that this colonial which criminalized free speech would go in the way of the colonial state into the dustbin of history. It has been retained to date. So, as we speak, 8 criminal cases back home, and all of them have to do with the offenses of sedition, of saying things that the powers that be do not like.
Very interesting.
Yeah. And I've just given my story, but as we speak, the national chairman of my party, the largest opposition party in Tanzania, the leader of the official opposition, Mbowe, and another MP is in prison. Charged with what? Charged with sedition.
I see.
With making statements in an electoral campaign meeting which are offensive of these sedition provisions in our law.
We'll come to that
yes.
A little bit later.
So what I wanted to say was a dramatic about time for the worse in when we speak of freedom of expression.
That
for quite some time, and I'm glad to meet you. Thank you so much.
To come here and participate in today's program.
I will quickly react. Thank you so much. I will quickly react to panelists here statements, starting with George. I commend him for about Tanzania. So he's relying on reports he has been receiving following the intervention you made. I'm grateful to you for raising that, because we always question the methodology used in research.
Right.
Since he doesn't know about Tanzania, I'm glad to share with him about what we have been doing. And my brother, Tundu Lissu, the Member of Parliament, what is happening now? The freedom of expression in Tanzania is entrenched in the Constitution. And we have legislation implementing that expression, that freedom of expression. The Media Service Act of 1916 which he participated in passing in Parliament, provides adequately on how to use that freedom, bringing upon others' rights, which is also very important. Because you cannot have freedom of expression that can go unchecked anywhere in the world. I'm privileged to have studied in America at George Washington almost 30 years ago. I learned about the history of the Seduction Act that was repealed in 1920, December 13th. More than 100 years. Making a false statement against the Congress, against the president, was criminalized, and it was harshly punishable. Not less than $10,000 US fine, and not more than 20 years jail sentence, or both. That is America. For Crimes Act, we have the... let me tell you one thing. Another example of freedom is my brother, Tundu Lissu. He has been speaking in the country, been put on him, is to bring him before the court of law. He's not a convict of any seduction crime. But the laws are clear under his cases. But since he left the hospital in Belgium, he has been hosted the Doshiwera here in Washington organizations, leveling against our president, against our government, against his country, demonizing the country. Is as good as demonizing yourself. And here he is expressing himself. And check the freedom of expression. Right. Is when people abuse that right of freedom of expression, hurting others. And so you cannot leave people to hurt everyone, including public interest. When you are speaking, consider there are others who could be hurt by your speech. Consider that if you terrorize about, they got hurt.
I'm afraid
so they have to react.
I'm afraid, Mr. Ambassador, time happens not to be our best ally, and I hope you will find some heart to forgive me for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
You are tuned into more of a discussion in a moment, so please don't go away.
We're talking about the news and issues of development and growth across Africa, around the world, and in our lives. And change with me, Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick, and
we're able to touch on important to people on an everyday basis. We hope that our viewers are getting inspired when they watch our show. They're getting a few of the things that perhaps are not in their immediate vicinity. Today, I could put in on the show a little unique, and this gives me that, inspiration to come to work.
A reminder that we appreciate all of the audience feedback. Straight Talk Africa streams live on Facebook, and you can also watch us live on your mobile, the VOA mobile app. Now let's look at what's on tap for next week's program.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, Nigeria's presidential election is set for February 16th. Since 1999, when the military relinquished power to a democratically elected civilian government. President Atiku Abubakar are both Fulani Muslims from northern Nigeria.
Africa. Our guests are John Tamin, Director of Africa Programs of Freedom House, Tundu Lissu, Chadema of Tanzania, the Tanzania ambassador to the United States, and Robert Bobby via Skype from the Ugandan capital. I stand, of course, corrected. That is very close to, I would say, Mashirinji. Mashirinji. In my Ruchiga, I would say Mashirinji. Yes. In your particular case, was nearly assassinated in the compound of the Tanzanian capital, Dodoma, during daylight at lunchtime, and his driver was not even hit by a single bullet. And this is a place, for example, he has said, and I have also found out that this is a place generally that is provided security 24/7, 24 hours a day. How do you explain that? I mean, how do you reconcile that type of freedom that you are talking about?
You cannot relate that directly without substantiated evidence with freedom of expression. My brother was attacked. We feel sorry for what happened to him. Our president expressed his dismay and condemned that act, and he ordered the law enforcement organs to investigate and get to the bottom of the matter and apprehend those who committed that criminal act against our brother. Everybody sympathizes with what happened to him. They are waiting for him to go back and make a statement, which he is giving to the press and non-government organizations outside the country. They are waiting. The driver hasn't presented himself to give a statement. So can you be a judge in your own court and convict anyone on that matter without listening to what one?
How do you respond to that?
Thank you very much. Maybe a few things that need to be set straight here. I was attacked inside a government housing compound, which, as you said, by armed security 24 hours, 7 days a week. And each apartment block inside that compound 24 hours, 7 days a week. And on the day of the attack, during lunch break, in the midst of parliamentary sessions, gunmen followed me from parliament inside that compound whatsoever. All the security guards had been removed from the perimeter wall blocks. So these gunmen had complete to this heavily guarded government building, and they rained me with bullets, and they left. And as we speak today,
notice at the driver, or at least went into...
The truth is he was not hit at all. Hit 16 times. I have undergone 22 surgeries and...
Could it be that whoever...
Target. But the most... Who ordered the security of this government housing compound? Number one, this government housing compound is secured by CCTV moved immediately after the attack. And there is about those CCTV by the police. That is number two. So no one knows what they show, because no one knows where they were taken to, because the police have never said a word about where they took the CCTV cameras from. Number three, there has never been, to my understanding, and I know this because I speak to people. I speak to people in the government as well. No one has been interviewed. My neighbors, I lived in the same building with the Minister for Energy, Medad Kalemani, with the permanent, with the former Health Minister, Hajim. One of my neighbors has been interviewed by the police. None of the housemaid and the housemaid of the Deputy Speaker, when I was shot, that were all flattened. So I was taken to hospital by the housemaid of the Speaker and has been interviewed. I was in Nairobi and during those 4 months, they sent reports, a request to me through my brother, who is my lawyer as well, that they will interview me and my driver, and we say, please come. They know, transfer to Belgium. Now the excuse has become Lissu to return and the driver so that they can be interviewed. But Mr. Shaka, with my senior brother here, a very senior lawyer, in Tanzania there is a law. It is called the Act, which makes provisions for all suspects, diction of the Tanzanian law enforcement agencies. So which would have allowed agencies to come to Nairobi, and the same law would have officers to Belgium, where I have been for the past 1 year, the serious terrorist act, terrorism, to interview me and my driver. So Speaker in Parliament as well as in writing to us, the Speaker has said, Parliament cannot foot the bill for my medical treatment.
16th, the nation's 6th since 1999, when the military relinquished power to a democratically elected civilian government. President Muhammadu Buhari Bakar are both Fulani Muslims from northern Nigeria.
Director of Africa Programs of Freedom House, Tundu Lissu, Chadema opposition member of parliament in Tanzania, Mashiringi, the Tanzania United States, and Robert Chagulanyi, also known as Bobi Wine, who joins us live via Skype from the Ugandan capital, Kampala. I stand, of course, correctly.
Mashiringi.
That is very close to my indigenous Mashiringi.
Pronounce it correctly.
Mashiringi. The Runyankore Ruchiga, I would say Mashiringi.
Yes.
In your particular case, Mashiringi.
Can I finish?
I started collected here. Could you please?
Yes. Thank you for an opportunity again. I was following up what Tundu Lissu is incarcerated in prison. He's a remandee, and he's a fellow remandee, and he has been allegedly, I will say allegedly because I'm not taking the bond. And
but the question is he free?
Freedom of expression is because the court, which has constitutional powers to act constitutionally and legally, has sent him to remand after violating the bond conditions.
But it's correct to own an opinion that is different from that opinion of the ruling party or state.
I have a quick answer to that. That is totally false. Currently, the parliament is in session. The parliament. The chief whip, unfortunately, is out because of the tragic event when caused the harm bodily harm on him. Otherwise, he was supposed to be in parliament. By coincidence, is a low day. Our president, His Excellency Dr. John Joseph Magufuli, the commander-in-chief, was a guest of honor. The Speaker of the House was in attendance. Several legal officers, like myself and my brother. So, if there is no one behind the bar for violating even the 34 social media platform licensed 224 with the cyber crimes law, nobody is behind the bar for violating any law that implements the freedom of expression right under the Constitution. And the regulation of freedom of expression, what's wrong with that? There is no violation of the Constitution. Nobody has been victimized. Whoever is charged, our presumption is that and he will be given a day in court to defend himself. My brother will be given a day in court to defend himself. But we cannot allow people to go and make false accusations, including demonizing the government.
With the fact that your brother here, Tundu Lissu, was nearly assassinated in the Tanzanian capital, Dodoma, during daylight. The driver was not even hit by a single bullet. And this is a place, for example, he has said, and I have also found out that this is a place, security, 24/7, 24 hours a day. How do you explain that? I mean, how do you reconcile that type of freedom that you are talking about?
You cannot relate that directly without substantiated evidence. My brother was attacked. We feel sorry for what happened to him. Our president expressed his dismay and condemned that act, and he ordered the law enforcement organs to investigate and get to the bottom of the matter and apprehend those who our brother. Everybody sympathizes what happened to him. Investigation is ongoing. They are waiting for him to go back and make a statement, which is giving to the president and government organization. They are waiting for the driver. The driver hasn't presented himself to give a statement. So, can you be a judge in your own cause? Can you condemn anyone and convict anyone on that matter?
Tundu, how to that?
there are a few things that need to be set straight here. I was attacked inside a government housing compound, which, as you said correctly, is guarded by armed security week. And each apartment block inside that compound is guarded 24 hours, 7 days a week. And on the day of the attack, during lunch break, in the midst of parliamentary sessions, gunmen followed me from Parliament inside that compound. There was no security whatsoever. All the security guards had been removed from the perimeter wall. So these gunmen had complete freedom of access into this heavily guarded government security compound. And they rained me with bullets, and they left. And as we speak today,
not a single bullet was fired at the driver, or at least went into the direction of the driver. Is it correct?
Well, the truth is he was not hit at all. That is the truth. I was hit 16 times. I have undergone 2. This is a word about cameras from. Number 3, there has never been, to my because I speak to people, no one has been interviewed. My neighbors, I lived in the same building with the Minister for Energy, Medad Kalemani, with the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Local Government, with the former Health Minister, Haji Mponda. Not a single one of my neighbors has been interviewed by the police. Me to the hospital. My housemaid and the housemaid of the deputy, they also shot all the cars that were in the driveway. The tires were all flattened. So by the housemaid of the speaker and my housemaid as well. None of them has been interviewed. I was in Nairobi together with my driver for 4 months. The Tanzanian police force made to me, through my brother who is my lawyer as well, that they would like to come to Nairobi to interview me and my driver, and we said, please come. So, and of course, after I was transferred to Belgium, we are waiting driver so that they can be interviewed. All due respect to my senior brother here, in Tanzania, there is a law. It is called Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Act, which makes provisions for evidence or suspects who run out of the jurisdiction of the Tanzanian law enforcement. There is a law which would have allowed Tanzanian law enforcement to take evidence from me and my driver. They have not done so. The same law would have allowed them to send police. Have been for the past 1 year. To date, they have not done so. They could have gone through the international. This was a serious criminal attack. In fact, under our statutes, short for political reasons, it's terrorism. They could have done Interpol to interview me and my driver. So far, they have not done. Assistance of the Kenyan government or the Belgian government. We have an embassy in the Belgian Kenyan government has an embassy in Dar es Salaam. They could have of our diplomatic missions in Nairobi and nothing has happened.
I see.
And finally, the Kenyan police force, they do not suspect anyone. No one has been, and of course, since there is no suspect and there is no arrest, no one has been prosecuted or convicted. And the president was very clear. The president has never, ever made a statement, one way or the other, to condemn this public on a parliamentary leader.
Has he ever called you?
Not at all. On the contrary, Mr. Shaka Sali, it is on record. There has been a huge dispute about my treatment.
Who is paying the bills?
The Parliament of Tanzania should have paid my bills in accordance with our statutory. Thus far, they have not paid a penny. And according to the Speaker, in Parliament, as well as in writing to us, the Speaker has said, Parliament cannot foot the bill for my medical treatment because the President has not given his permission for money to be released for that purpose. Now, to finish, under our law, treatment of
a country,
yeah,
by all intents and purposes, is in a manner that is subordinate to the executive.
That's a great question, Shaka. And the best answer I can give is to use on the President is on record that those troublemakers of the opposition in Parliament kick them out of Parliament so that deal with them outside.
When they
chuck them out of Parliament outside.
I see.
And 3 years we have been kicked out of Parliament on occasions, and the President has dealt with us since Parliament.
Using the security forces?
Being arrested on 2 occasions, outside 2 occasions,
I see.
for making absolutely protected under our Constitution, for making statements, and they wait for me outside and
arrest you.
And arrest me. And on all occasions when I was arrested, I'm a lawyer, I would ask them, and the answer has always been orders from above.
Well, let me go to Kampala to...
I'm there, Shaka.
You are listening?
Yeah, I'm listening, following very attentively.
Does this sound to some degree familiar?
Well, that sounds familiar, but those people looks like it's not only in Uganda, but I would like to speak authoritatively and how we can change it. I believe that all dictators will use the law to oppress and will indeed get very threatened when they see people communicating. Talking more on the freedom of expression thing that people have remained with, remembering that in Uganda and I'm sure other African countries, the internet is being restricted so much, and that will remind us that social media tax was introduced in there's been continuous blockage of attack on the rights of the people, especially communication rights. However, we also know that we have opportunities to change this. One of the opportunities is the numbers that we have. Here in Uganda, we are getting people ready to change this because we know we can change it. It will really be unfair for me to talk about the problem and ignoring with our brothers outside there in Africa. But in Uganda, we intend to end all this oppression in 2021. That's why we're calling upon all people to be decisive, to get involved in the
state and the ruling party are fused.
Sure. The state and the ruling party are fused in Uganda, and indeed it has been said and proved over time that when you come against the bank of you're coming against Uganda police and all the institutions. But again, we know that where we are, many countries have been there before. All the countries that we admire today, the countries like Angola, have gone through repression history, and looking at the factors that we have, which favor us in all ways, we believe that we're going to be able to change it. So the coming together that I'm talking about is the calling upon all Ugandans. Right now we are having a campaign called Get Your National ID. We're getting all people in Uganda, and indeed if other countries in Africa could pick a leaf from what we're doing, they'll be able to change their plight. Here in Uganda, we're going to change it in 2021, and indeed, we are putting President Museveni on notice that we are putting an end to the Museveni dictatorship in 2021.
I see. John, it looks like about situations really where democracy perhaps cannot possibly be defined in the manner that a former great American president, Abraham Lincoln, would have characterized people, by the people, for the people. but that perhaps in fact we are looking at a new definition of a government of some people, by some people, for some people. How do you react to that?
I think that's true in certain circumstances, and that's where some of the grassroots movements that are resisting that kind of logic are so important. You look at the recent elections in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which were quite disappointing, and it seems like the outcome is not the legitimate outcome. But there are remarkable movements, particularly youth movements, who are really pushing against that kind of a logic and trying to move the country towards more legitimate elections. And I think you'll see Honorable Bobi Wine in particular leading that kind of an effort as well. So there is that logic in some countries, and it's not just limited to Africa. But I think there's strong and really growing resistance to that. That's what we see on the streets of Sudan and Zimbabwe today.
Masiringi, Ambassador Masiringi, how do you respond, for example, to someone who will say, in Tanzania, there are no citizens, but subjects? Citizens meaning owing allegiance to the state and therefore having a constitutional right. But in this particular case, subjects because basically they owe allegiance to an individual authority and therefore in return receive some privileges.
That's absolutely false statement with regard to Tanzania. And my brother Tundu Lissu will agree with me.
Could you please wrap it up, because time is not our best ally.
I appreciate your time. Tanzania is a democratically governed country that respects human rights and the rule of law. There are citizens, not subjects.
Unfortunately, on that note, our guests today were John Tamin, Tundu Lissu, Ambassador Wilson Masiringi, and Robert Chagulanyi, also known as Bobi Wine, who joined us from Kampala. Thanks to our audience for tuning into Straight Talk Africa. In the meantime, get better, not bitter Africa, and please remember to keep the African hopes alive.
Zimbabwe today.
Masiringi,
that respects human rights and the rule of law. There are citizens, not subjects.
Unfortunately, on that note, our guests today were John Tamin, Tundu Lissu, Ambassador Wilson Masiringi, and Robert Chagulanyi, who joined us from Kampala. Thanks to our audience for tuning into Straight Talk Africa. In the meantime, get better, not bitter Africa, and please remember to keep the African hopes alive.
That respects human rights and the rule of law. There are citizens, not subjects.
Unfortunately, on that note, our guests today were John Tamin, Tundu Lissu, Ambassador Wilson Masiringi,